Hi class, we're back. We're going to finish with or continue on. It's probably going to take at least this video and probably another video to continue this lecture about interpersonal communication, basically an overview to give you an idea of and a basis and a foundation for how we're going to approach this class. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we left off here. I'm actually going to go to the next. No, I don't want to do that. I so apologize. Let's do that again. Okay, here we are. Play from current slide. Okay, so we left off talking about physical needs, and I think you got it, how important we need interpersonal communication to survive. I mean, and thrive, but survive and thrive. And so what does it mean to say identity needs, right? What are we talking about? Interpersonal communication identity needs. What does that have to do with interpersonal communication or identity? I want you to think about when you were very young. And I want you to think about how people responded to you, right? How people, were they happy to see you? How did they talk to you? What was the tone of their voice? So what they mean about identity needs is we start to learn about who we are by how people respond to us. Think about that, right? So before we have even started to talk, our parents or our caretakers, whoever is taking care of us, our grandparents, if we're foster kids or foster parents, they're responding to us in a certain way. How did they respond to us? How did that make us feel? Right? That's starting to shape our identity. What did they tell us to wear based upon our gender identity, based upon what kind of biological equipment we have, right? If we were a girl, were we supposed to wear dresses? Was our identity shaped by that, by what we wore, what we could play with, right? If you're a boy, were you allowed to have a doll? If you were a girl, were you allowed to have Legos? Were you to have building blocks? Or for me, I have, and I'll show you. I have this little collection of. Can you see it right there? There's one of my cars, right? I have a few of these. I have another one over here. I used to collect these for a while. Why? Because I always wanted these cars. I wasn't allowed to have these cars because I'm a girl. Okay? And so that's what I mean about identity. It's like, how does your identity get shaped by how people talk to you? So that's what happens, and that's how we get to know who we are, right? It's for good and for bad, right? Who we are. Are we beautiful? Are we smart? What do people tell us? I grew up thinking I was smart. Not always so that I proved it, but because I was told I was smart, right? My partner or my wife, she didn't grow up with those messages. So she has to work to tell herself that she is smart and intelligent, which she is. But I was told I was gifted, I was super smart, I had a good brain. I was told those things in my identity. But I was also told, right, that shaped through my interaction with others, I was also told that I wasn't athletic. But you know what? I am kind of athletic. And I didn't find that out until I met my wife, who's a personal trainer. So just because your identity gets shaped through that interaction doesn't mean, remember, those are those people and they're bringing all their stuff with them, their lens of how they see you. Keep that in mind. Okay. We define ourselves based upon others' reaction to us. Yes. Now, maybe not so much today, but you did when you were younger, right? You did it remember you were like in junior high or even in elementary school. If were you the kid that was like the fat kid, or were you the kid that was like popular, right? How did you become popular? Were you physically attractive, right? How we define ourselves, our identity, based upon how other people respond to us and treat us. And acting human, what we call acting human, is a learned process. You all have heard about the kid, and honestly, I don't even know if this is true or not, was raised by wolves or was raised in the wild. I mean, Jungle Book, the story by Disney, goes along the same lines of someone raised in the jungle, or Tarzan, right? You being a human being is a learned process. And I always think it's interesting because I like to think about the fact that you could take an American child, a Caucasian child, doesn't have to be American, a Caucasian child. Let's take it, let's say they're from Norway, okay, a Norwegian child, and that Norwegian child who was born in Norway gets taken to Singapore, okay, or let's say Shanghai, farther place in another place in China, okay, and gets raised by Chinese parents that are Asian, that are Chinese by culture and by a race, okay, an ethnicity. That Norwegian child will, one, speak Chinese fluently and act Chinese. It's not, the child won't look Chinese, but it will speak and act just like the culture that it's grown up in. That's fascinating, right? So acting human is a learned process. I think it's kind of cool and interesting, actually. It shows how malleable we are. All right, last thing. Messages, like I said this already, messages that we are given throughout our whole life influences our identity and how we feel about ourselves, right? Social needs. This goes back to this idea that we can't be alone, but it's also we socially, right? We need to be with people. This is why going through what we're going through right now is so difficult, right? Living in a pandemic is difficult because we are apart from people. If you're a single individual and you're stuck at home during a pandemic, man, your social needs for interaction are really limited. And you may start to say, the heck with it. I'm just going to break rules so I can feel connected to people. I have friends that I meet on Zoom and they talk about how miserable they are. I'm lucky I have some pets and a partner. So I'm not as miserable as, excuse me, as maybe I could be if I was alone. So communication also is the way we get our needs met. We tell people, hey, I want to give you a hug. I want to give you a kiss. Or will you please hug me? Or will you please hold me while I cry? It's a way we communicate to get our social needs met. There's an idea that people who have, and it's actually studies have shown that, and I think Goffman, I can tell you like the little story about Goffman, that people who have positive relationships with other human beings, that they feel the best about themselves and about their life. In fact, I don't even need to use an example. I can use an example in my own life. I can testify that when I was previously married, I was very unhappily married. Very unhappily married. And I don't think it had so much to do with that I was married to a man at the time. It had nothing to do with that, I don't think. I was just not happy with that person. And it made me see the world very negatively. And I felt like I couldn't get out. And I've been out of that marriage now since 2012. It's been a long time. And I'm, as you know, I'm newly married. So the point is, how you feel about what kind of relationships you have affect how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your life. There's this great TED Talk, actually. Robert, What Makes a Good Life? This Longest Study in Happiness. I invite you all to watch that. I really invite you to watch that. We're not going to watch it, spend the time here on this particular, this lecture. But this is a cool study because it shows what makes true happiness in the study. It's the longest longitudinal study. Unfortunately, it's done on men, and I think it's all white men. So there are limitations to the study, and he says it, right? But it makes a point about what truly makes us happy. I invite you to watch that. Okay. Practical goals. We communicate both verbally and non-verbally to get things done, right? Also known as instrumental goals. Communication is a tool, right? Helps us explain things. I'm doing it right now. Helps us negotiate. Student says, hey, if you do this, then I can do this, or we negotiate with each other. It's essential to your career. I always tell students that are good in communication, you can get a job. If you can communicate, you can get a job almost anywhere if you're able to really communicate. And you're gonna learn in this class, communication isn't just talking. In fact, communication probably is more listening than talking. Okay, let's look at, we have a little time, and then I'm going to stop the video. I'm going to start talking about Maslow's hierarchies of need. So Maslow said, we have these hierarchy of needs. And in order to get the highest need met, we have to meet these needs at the bottom. So let's look at that. We're going to just look at that. So here it is. So at the bottom of in a pyramid, all of us are after this thing called self-actualization. Self-actualization really means true self-acceptance and peace within your heart of who you are. You're okay with who you are. Now, I won't say that I don't think you get there. It isn't like some kind of state of bliss and you're there and that's the end of it. I don't really believe that. I think you can get there and then, you can go back and forth. Okay. I'm not sure whether he said you're going to get there, that we all are going to that, but that's ultimately, I think, what we're all after. There's feeling okay within our own skin, right? So in order to have that, we got to have our food and water needs met. Those are our physiological needs. Then we have to have a job, a way to take care of ourselves, and people in our lives, right? Health, employment, family, property. Okay? So not just clothing and shelter, physiological needs, but we need even more than that. If you don't have these things met, you're not going to be worried about being comfortable in your own skin. You're not going to be comfortable in your own skin, right? Because your life is uncertain. I've been there. I've been in that safety and security needs. I know exactly. It's a scary place to be. Love and belongingness. Once you have that safety, you can move into intimacy, right? Intimacy happens when we feel safe. That's when we start to have connections where you can start to develop family. Maybe there's marriage. And with that, notice that comes before self-esteem needs like career. That your family and your relationships help you feel confident, right? It's a jumping off point to take care of yourself, to go after what you want, to broaden your life, to build your life. And through that building, you're able to find your own inner peace. And that's basically what Mr. Maslow said. Abraham Maslow was a sociologist, and Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a very famously often used way of understanding the process. And if you apply that to interpersonal communication, you can see how all these things are integral, right? You're not doing this alone. This journey might be like your own journey, but other people are helping you or communicating with you and supporting you and encouraging you and doing all those things along the way for you to get there. Okay. All right, we're going to stop there and I'm going to meet you again in a little bit. I'll see you then.